got better. Salvation Army Red Kettle campaign kicks off at the Holyoke Mall tomorrow with a special bell ringing to mark the start of the giving season. It'll start at 11 a.m. on the second floor of the mall by the AT&T store. The Holyoke High School Madrigal Choir will be there to sing Christmas carols and bring holiday joy to the occasion. The Salvation Army of Holyoke also serves Chicopee, South Hadley, and Granby. And with the rising cost of living, the need for donations is greater than ever. Western Mass News spoke to the neighboring Springfield branch of the Salvation Army recently, explaining just how far these donations go.
It is a fundraiser that raises critical dollars, not only to support the Christmas programs that happen throughout Springfield and, of course, the state of Massachusetts, providing food and clothing, but it also supports the programs that we serve throughout the year, including emergency assistance, clothing, food, paying utility bills, and all of those other things that we do.
And while Holyoke's campaign gets underway tomorrow, you can help donate in Springfield starting Friday, November 28th.